Can't believe I'm saying this, but there is only one Grand Prix this year that actually puts a little bit of fear into Red Bull, and that is the Singapore GP, the one we have upcoming. But why is that? I have a full explanation in this video as to why this could be a way closer track for Red Bull than any other typical track. So Singapore layout actually kind of doesn't suit this car. That's one thing. The second thing is that we have a new revision coming that is actually helping them out. This Singapore track is very particular. Some cars will be very well suited to it, some won't, because it's kind of Monaco-esque, but with a couple of different corners, but a lot more curbs. Now, Monaco saw a very close race between Aston Martin and Red Bull, and the third sector was what saved Max Verstappen from actually not having pole in that race. The car was kind of weak there. Now, the one thing the third sector doesn't have, but the first and second sector do, is a lot of curbs. In the first curb in Monaco, you have kind of that little tree stump that comes out onto the straight. Then you also have into the second one that little double turn that you have to do. So there are curbs that you have to take. The one thing the Red Bull car doesn't like is curbs. But why don't they like curbs? Curbs have been kind of the thing that has suited the Aston Martin car, and funny enough, the Mercedes of this year. There is a specific reason for this, why the curbs are working and not for the Red Bull car. Now, the Red Bull car throughout the season, though, has been the best car. There is no question about that. And I don't think that we will ever question throughout the season that there has been a track that they have not been dominant on, except for Monaco. And as I said, they are pretty familiar in some circumstances. Max Verstappen also has never won a race here, might I add. This is the only track so far that we've been to that Max Verstappen has not won a race yet at. That is Singapore. With the floor, you have to put the floor as low as possible. And now cars are optimized to, I guess you can say, the height of the floor. So the lower your floor, the more downforce you're actually generating, but the car is dependent on how low the floor can be. The issue with the W13 was that the floor was super low, but it wasn't getting the downforce that it wanted. It had a lot of porpoising. It had that effect to the car, so they never actually got the best out of that car. Now for the Red Bull, it's actually the lowest car on the grid this year. And if we remember, in Belgium, they had to lift going into Rascasse because the car was so low to the ground. It made the issue for them that they actually might have like some problem with their electronic system because the car was rattling so much going through Le Rouge and Raidillon. This did not really significantly hurt their pace because the car was still able to go pretty low, especially on the straights, making it still a bullet, but also into Sector 2, it was a monster. But there wasn't as much curbs or really that difference in height like Le Rouge and Raidillon. So there was no reason for them to actually lift in those spots, except for that one position, which was losing them like a whole 5 times per lap though. At some points it was, because they had to lift so much, scared that the issue would get worse. And there was an issue for Max in Monza. It was a braking issue, funny enough now that we go at it. Singapore will be a lot of braking. Now, this is like a real subtle one. I'm not really talking about the braking, but I want to add it in. I want to add in that the braking was an issue for Max Verstappen by the end of the Monza Grand Prix. Will that be an issue here? Don't know, but I might as well bring it up. With their car was riding super low. Now, the issue is when your car is riding that low, great for straights, great for even taking corners that are pretty flat though. But in Singapore, where everything is twisty-turny, the most physical track on the grid, you want your car to be at an optimal ride height. But with this car, the best ride height is obviously the lowest one. And with any car, it really is. But throughout the season, the Aston Martin specifically and the Mercedes have been riding at a ride height that is a bit above the Red Bull, making them actually better on curbs. The best out of the three though is Aston Martin. That's why they were so strong in Monaco, which will make them a contender here if their upgrades are working to plan. This could all go into a downhill direction and Red Bull could just win by 30 seconds. These are all potentials that I'm talking about as to why Helmut and Marko is really bringing up this kind of fear that they have. Their whole goal is to now win every single race in the 2023 season. For them to do that, they say Singapore is the one track that they could have an issue at. And I believe this to be the one track that they could actually have an issue at as well. First of all, qualifying has to be supreme. They can't do what they did last year. But if it's raining, that will actually help their car, funny enough. Because then they don't have to ride the car as low. They can actually optimize their setup a little bit more towards the race if it's raining and not really rely too much onto qualifying. But if they have to put their car super low, like they usually do in any other Grand Prix, they have certain risks that they could be taking onto the curbs. Like, as I said again, these are all potentials. I'm not saying here that Red Bull won't be the strongest car, because they very well could be, but I can see as to why they have these fears and why Helmut, Marko, and Christian Horner are talking about it. They even bring up that Leclerc is a beast in qualifying, and while I do agree, I don't think the Ferrari car is the one that they should be really looking out here for. I think it's Lewis Hamilton or Fernando Alonso that they really need to be fearful of taking that pole position, if not even taking a 1-2 between those two guys. Now, George should also have a good Grand Prix, but he's kind of been behind Lewis, so I'm not really going to bring him up. Lance, I don't even need to mention the name, but those are the contenders here. Now, I would say Perez can have a good Grand Prix here. His driving style and the way he likes to drive works here. It's a street track. We're finally back at a street track for Perez, so let's see where his potential is at. I mean, he won it last year, but would he have won it if Max Verstappen finished his qualifying lap? I don't think so. He also had a banging start by Perez. It's a track, as I said, the philosophies don't work with a super, super low to the ground car. Sometimes it might not work, sometimes it will work. It's really dependent on where they put this car. They're probably going to optimize it for the race and really take over. So I don't have my expectations really high, but it is worth noting that this is the track that the Red Bull car could actually lose on because of its floor height. That is the one issue it could have here. That is why they say they are optimistic, but they're cautious. Because now they actually have that set out goal of winning every single race. And as I said before, I really do think they can win every single race. I don't think that is something that won't happen. They are the best car on the grid for any track. Ride height will be very important here, but so will that little straight that was added into the new layout of Singapore, which, as I said, will go to the benefit of Red Bull. The way cars are going to be optimized here will be closer to Monaco, but not as much downforce because of the couple of straights now and overtaking trying to be a little bit more probable. Now, I watched how it looked like in the F1 2023 game, and I wasn't really a fan of these couple of straights. I actually don't think that they promote that much overtaking. I think, if anything, they just take away from the actual difficulty of the track. And if the track was laid out like before, it would have went to the benefit of Mercedes and Aston Martin big time. But I want to hear your thoughts down below for this track. Do you guys believe this is a track that Red Bull can actually lose on? Their actual worries, are they actually there? Or is Helmut and Christian just kind of hyping it up for the fans? Like, oh, we might lose a race. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. I personally believe that Red Bull's still going to win this track. I do think, though, Fernando and Lewis will be pretty close here, and we could see a very good Grand Prix. Now, I mean, 2019 was a great one. I hope that we see one again this year. 2022 was actually pretty good too, so excited for the Singapore Grand Prix. Biggest upgrades coming out tomorrow, so stand by for that. Thank you guys so much for the support. Leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.